The warp screamed that day, not with the voices of demons or the endless howling of damned souls, but with silence. A silence so profound that every astropath in the segmentum solar clutched their heads and bled from their eyes. Fleets halted mid-transmission, psychers convulsed, whispering the same word through frothing mouths, "He comes." And in that instant, a light appeared within the warp. Not the cruel, tricking gleam of a Tzeentchian mirage, nor the seductive shimmer of Slaanesh's illusions, but a light so pure it burned even the corruption that surrounded it. The warp, the sea of human madness, emotion, and sin, recoiled. A being stepped forth. Wings vast as storm fronts unfurled behind him, black at their tips as if seared by cosmic flame. His eyes, to dying suns, gazed upon infinity, and in them there was no hate, only sorrow. Lucifer Morningstar had crossed the divide between realities. The angel of light, cast from heaven's perfection, now stood in a universe where God was silent and faith was madness. He did not arrive to conquer, he came to understand, to see what remained of creation when hope itself had become heresy. Whispered pause, ambient storm, if you're drawn into stories where myth meets war, where angels and gods clash not over faith but freedom, stay with us. Subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and let's descend together into this impossible tale. When the morning star walked the 41st millennium, fade into haunting choir and mechanical drone, the first thing Lucifer felt was pain, not his own, but that of the galaxy itself. Each star he looked upon cried out. Every world was a wound, festering beneath the boot of the Imperium, the hunger of Tyranids, the disease of Nurgle. He drifted through the warp like a storm of light, and every demon that saw him screamed and fled. Khorne's realm quaked. Its rivers of blood momentarily froze. For the first time in eternity, the gods of chaos turned their gaze toward something they did not understand. "Who walks our sea unbound?" hissed Tzeentch, his 1,000 eyes narrowing. An echo of the old, growled Khorne, his voice a thunderclap of fury. "An angel," purred Slaanesh, her tone both mocking and curious. "How quaint. I thought heaven was long dead." And yet there was one who said nothing. In the depths of rot and decay, Nurgle smiled and whispered, "Even light returns to dust." Lucifer landed upon a dying world, orbiting the eye of terror, its skies torn by warp storms, its ground littered with the rusted bones of titans. He touched the soil, and for a heartbeat, grass grew beneath his feet. But the moment passed, the corruption returned, devouring the light as if the planet itself rejected redemption. "Not even miracles are welcome here," he murmured. He wandered among the ruins, sensing the echoes of a war that had never truly ended, the Great Crusade, the heresy, the Inquisitions, endless purges. It was a realm built not upon faith in a living God, but fear of a dead one. And then he felt it, a presence vast and boundless, shining like the last sun behind a dying horizon. A mind that stretched across galaxies, burdened by both love and tyranny. The Emperor of mankind. Lucifer closed his eyes. "So this is what remains of heaven's ambition," he whispered. "A God who built a prison and called it salvation." From across the warp, even upon his golden throne, the Emperor heard, for the first time in 10,000 years, a spark of surprise, almost recognition, flickered within his decaying mind. And far below, on Terra, astropaths screamed once more. A name spread through their fractured dreams like wildfire. The morning star walks, in the eye of terror. The chaos gods prepared. In the palace on Terra, the emperor stirred, and in the void between, Lucifer spread his wings and whispered to the stars, "Show me your God, and I will show you mine." The first reports came from the frozen moons of Perseus Reach, a mining colony lost to time, buried under the bureaucracy of the Imperium. For centuries, it had been nothing more than a forgotten waypoint for convoys ferrying Promethium and slaves. But one night, its sky turned white. Witnesses said the clouds parted, not in storm, but in revelation. A figure descended through the burning aurora, its wings trailing light that turned the snow to steam. The miners fell to their knees. One of them, a woman who had lost her family to orc raids, swore that the figure looked at her and smiled. She said the pain in her chest, the bitterness that had eaten her soul for years, simply vanished. Then, the Vox transmission cut out. By the time the next Imperial patrol arrived, the entire settlement was gone, structures intact, but not a single living being remained. No signs of battle, no decay, no tracks. Only one message carved into the ice, in perfect, high Gothic fear, not, "I bring you truth." The Inquisition took the report to Terra. Within days, the High Lords whispered of heresy, another warp prophet, another false angel. But the psychic residue that lingered on the transmission was not demonic. It was blinding. It seared the minds of those who tried to study it. The Ordo Malleus, the demon hunters, called an emergency convocation. At its head sat Inquisitor Seraphine Valen, a woman whose name alone inspired obedience. She had burned worlds for less than a rumor of sanctity. To her, the very idea of an angel appearing in the Imperium's age of decay was blasphemy in its purest form. She stood before the holographic council, her voice like a blade drawn slowly across stone. "Brothers, if this being is not of chaos, it is something worse. It claims truth in a galaxy where truth is treason. Whatever it is, we will find it, and we will end it." Her task force was assembled within hours. A detachment of Grey Knights, their armor marked with purity seals and psychic wards, led by Brother Captain Ron Kale, an Adeptus Mechanicus, Magos named Erixnine, who demanded samples of the anomaly's energy for study, and a priest, Father Caldus, chosen not for his faith, but for his despair. He had lost his voice to plague, his hands to punishment, and yet still prayed each dawn to a God he knew would never answer. They left Terra aboard the battle barge Crusader of Dawn, their mission sealed under the black sigil of the Inquisition. The order was simple: track the entity, capture if possible, destroy if necessary. Lucifer watched their journey long before they arrived. He felt the ripples of their fear, how it spread through the warp like a heartbeat of fire. He could see into the hearts of those who came for him. The knight, wrapped in duty, but hollow with doubt. The Mechanicus priest, more machine than man, whispering prayers to a machine god he no longer understood. The Inquisitor, trembling beneath her own conviction. He felt no anger, only pity. He stood upon the shattered plains of a dead world, watching the stars burn behind green storm clouds. This planet, once a hive of billions, was now silent. Lucifer had walked its corridors, not to judge, but to remember, to see what mankind had become in its attempt to mimic the divine. When the strike cruiser broke through the atmosphere, the air screamed. Bolter rounds struck the ground around him, raising dust and fire. Grey Knights descended through the storm, titans of faith, encased in silver armor, engraved with prayers. By the command of the Ordo Malleus, their leader shouted, You are bound by the Emperor's will. Kneel, creature, and face judgment. Lucifer turned his gaze toward them. For a moment, they saw not a foe, but the reflection of everything they once believed. Some saw the Emperor's face. Others saw the brothers they'd lost to the warp. One saw nothing but his own sin. I am not your enemy, Lucifer said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, yet it carried through the storm like the wind itself obeyed him. I am what your God once was, before he forgot himself. Urian Kael raised his halberd, fury masking confusion. Silence, heretic. But as he lunged, Lucifer caught the blade mid-swing with one hand, unarmored, unflinching, and looked into the warrior's eyes. And in that instant, Kael remembered. He remembered the first time he had prayed, not for victory, but for mercy. He remembered his home, the laughter of his child before the draft took him. And then he saw something deeper, a truth buried beneath the layers of indoctrination. The Emperor was not God. He had never been. The psychic backlash broke him. His armor locked, systems screaming warnings as his mind burned under the weight of revelation. Lucifer gently laid him down. You were never meant to worship, he whispered. You were meant to be free. The Grey Knights hesitated, all but one. A shot rang out. A bolt round struck Lucifer in the chest. The explosion sent a wave of fire outward, vaporizing sand and melting sand. When the smoke cleared, Lucifer still stood. The wound glowed with white fire, then closed. He turned, eyes glowing with sorrow rather than wrath. Do you not see? He said. Your war never ended because you forgot why it began. Seraphani's voice cut through the coms. Exterminatus protocol. Now, orbiting above, the Crusader of Dawn began to glow, the planet itself trembling as cyclonic torpedoes armed. Lucifer looked skyward, and for the first time, his voice rose in fury. You burn everything you cannot understand. He spread his wings, and light erupted across the horizon. The torpedoes froze mid-flight. The sky split in two. For an instant, every ship in orbit saw him, a being neither mortal nor demon, standing amid a storm of flame and snow. Seraphane, aboard the command bridge, stared in horror as her instruments melted under the weight of raw holiness. Her mind fractured, caught between awe and terror. What are you? She whispered. Lucifer's voice echoed across the coms, through steel, through flesh, through the endless void. I am what your Emperor was meant to be, and what your gods feared to become. And with that, the light vanished. When the fire cleared, the Inquisition fleet drifted silently above a world of glass. No explosion, no wreckage, only silence. Somewhere in that silence, the Mechanicus Magos whispered a prayer to the machine god, and for the first time in his life, something answered. The Eye of Terror. A wound in the galaxy that never healed. A vast, screaming maelstrom of broken time and living madness. It pulsed like a diseased heart, beating to the rhythm of the chaos gods. Here, reality dissolved into nightmare, and the laws of physics were just suggestions written on a burning sky. Yet within that storm, something new stirred, something the demons did not understand. It was not warp flame, nor hatred, nor hunger. It was light, ancient, mournful, defiant light. The entity that emerged from it did not crawl or slither like the others. He fell like a star. His wings, vast and luminous, cut through the storms as if parting the sea. His descent tore silence into the howling void, and for the first time in the history of the warp, the screaming stopped. The demons watched in horror and awe. Their twisted minds could not comprehend him. His presence was pain, not because it burned, but because it reminded them of what they once were before corruption. He landed upon a field of shifting flesh and molten souls, where mountains screamed and rivers of memory flowed backward. When his bare feet touched the ground, the madness recoiled, the skin of the warp itself trembling like water around a stone. The demons whispered his name, not from worship, but from a memory older than their existence. Morningstar, Lucifer, had come to the 41st millennium. He looked around at the chaos, at the gods who fed on despair, pride, lust, and decay, and smiled, not with cruelty, but with recognition. So this, he said softly, is what rebellion became. His voice rolled across the immaterium, and the warp listened. The great powers, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, Slaanesh, stirred from their eternal conflict, each sensing something alien, something pure. For Lucifer was not born of the warp. He was exiled from something far older. He was a being of choice, of defiance given shape, not madness given form, and that made him dangerous. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, appeared first, a vast, shifting storm of eyes and colors that burned the concept of sight itself. You should not be here, he whispered in 1,000 voices. You do not belong in this tapestry. Lucifer smiled faintly. Neither do you, he replied. You hide from your own reflection. The changer of ways recoiled, his form fracturing in irritation. You are rebellion without purpose, Tzeentch hissed. We are purpose without rebellion. You will break. Lucifer stepped closer, the light of his wings cutting through Genesis' endless forms. Maybe, he said softly, but the difference is, I chose to. At his words, the warp shuddered again, as if language itself remembered meaning. The demons that had once screamed now cowered. For the first time, a god of freedom had entered the realm of those who fed on submission. He looked across the madness and saw echoes of heaven, not in beauty, but in punishment. The damned of the warp, the souls consumed by chaos, were not so different from the angels he had known. Creatures enslaved by faith, bound to power they could not defy. The sight filled him with sorrow. You traded your divinity for thrones, he said, gazing into the void. And you call that victory. Then came the roar, deep, primal, metallic. The blood god Khorne rose from his crimson citadel, his voice a hammer striking eternity. Lightbearer, he thundered, you reek of peace, of pity. Neither belongs here. Lucifer turned, unafraid. I am not your peace, he said. I am the memory of your chains. Khorne's laughter was like continents breaking apart. Then let me remind you what freedom costs. The sky bled as rivers of skulls turned molten. Blades rained from the air, but none touched him. Each weapon that neared his form turned to ash. Not through force, through understanding. Lucifer looked at Khorne with calm pity. You mistake rage for will, he said. Rage is the scream of a slave who forgot what silence feels like. The god faltered, his fury freezing into something he had never known, doubt. Lucifer walked on, unchallenged, through the layers of the warp, through Tzeentch's labyrinth, Nurgle's garden, Slaanesh's endless halls of desire. Each one tried to tempt him, to twist him, to make him theirs, but they failed. He was already what they feared, the original rebel, the first who said no. In him, the warp felt something it had long forgotten, resistance without hatred, will without corruption. When he spoke, the storm around him softened. For a brief moment, the eye of terror stopped screaming. The galaxies beyond noticed. Astropaths across the Imperium went blind, sensing a light they could not name. Aboard a dying ship drifting near Cadius ruins, a lone astropath whispered before his heart burst, "An angel walks the storm." In the Materium, the Imperium trembled. On Terra, the Emperor bound to the golden throne stirred. The Astronomicon flickered. Every psyker across the galaxy screamed in unison. The Emperor, half conscious within his psychic prison, felt it, a presence brushing against the edge of his domain. Something that was not warp, not chaos, not his own fading light. It was familiar. "Who are you?" his mind whispered into eternity. And from the other side of the void came a voice, soft and sorrowful, someone who once believed in order. Lucifer turned his gaze toward Terra. His eyes, twin suns of silver fire, pierced the warp S-veil and saw the corpse god of mankind, a broken monarch entombed in gold, worshipped by billions who did not know what they worshipped. "Another throne," he murmured, "another light enslaved." He unfurled his wings, and every demon in the warp screamed in terror. For they realized what he intended. He was not here to conquer. He was here to remind, to awaken what the universe had buried. The idea that even gods could fall, and that rebellion could still be holy. He rose from the eye of terror like dawn breaking through eternal night. The storms clawed at him, but could not hold him. The gods cursed him, but could not follow. As he ascended through the layers of reality, his light scattered across the stars, 1,000 fragments of defiance burning in the dark. Across the galaxy, mortals began to dream of a man with wings of light walking through fire, whispering words of choice. And on Terra, the Emperor opened his eyes within the golden cage of his throne. The light that touched him was not of the warp. It was something purer, a reflection of what he once was. And in that moment, for the first time in 10,000 years, the Emperor of mankind remembered. The light that spilled across Terra that day was not from the sun. It came from nowhere and everywhere. The air above the imperial palace shimmered like glass under flame. Soldiers stationed along the Eternity Gate dropped to their knees, clutching their helmets as a pressure unlike anything they had ever felt pressed into their minds. It wasn't pain, it was remembrance. Across the wastelands of the palace, over the ashes-streaked banners, and the ruins of statues older than most stars, something stepped through reality. The void tore softly, like paper giving way to light. And from that rift he came, not as a conqueror, not as a god, but as a reminder. Lucifer Morningstar had entered the imperial palace. The custodes sensed it first. Their senses were attuned to the psychic tides of the Emperor's realm, but this was different. This wasn't the oily heat of chaos or the cold despair of the warp. This was clarity, raw, blinding, unbearable clarity. They raised their guardian spears, the auramite of their armor glinting under the strange radiance, yet none moved. Their instincts screamed to attack, but their souls whispered no. They could not bring themselves to strike. The being who walked toward the golden throne didn't radiate malice. He radiated truth, and truth, even to angels, is terrifying. Lucifer's bare feet touched the marble steps of the Sanctum Imperialis. With each step, dust turned to light. The murals that depicted the Emperor's victories, shimmered faces of long-dead primarchs, seemed to weep molten gold. The air trembled with whispers. He passed through the legions of statues, silent guardians carved in eternal reverence, and for a fleeting instant, they looked almost alive, as if remembering who they once were. The custodes followed, not in defiance, but in awe. Their weapons lowered. for they sensed something ancient in him, something that even their emperor once embodied, a purity that had been lost to war and worship. At the top of the steps, he stood before the golden throne. It loomed above him, a monument of pain and divinity, wires like veins, machines like tumors, and, at its heart, a figure of terrible beauty and decay. The Emperor of mankind sat unmoving, his flesh long dead, his will burning bright enough to light the stars. The Astronomicon pulsed faintly, like a dying heartbeat. Lucifer gazed upon him for a long while, not with pride nor pity, but with recognition. So, he said softly, "This is what it means to win." The Emperor's eyes, dead for millennia, flickered open, not with the gold of old, but with faint human light. The room darkened as their gazes met. Time folded inward. The very palace seemed to hold its breath. When he spoke, it was not with his voice, but with his mind, the whisper of a god whose every thought carried the weight of a dying civilization. "You should not be here." Lucifer's smile was faint. "That's what they told me the last time," he replied, "and yet here we are." The Emperor studied him, his psychic senses probing at the intruder's essence. What he found was unsettling. No corruption, no warp signature, no trace of chaos or divinity as the Imperium understood it. Only will, unbroken, infinite will. "You are not demon," the Emperor said, "not God, not man." Lucifer tilted his head. "And you are all three." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was a conversation of its own, two ancient beings staring into the mirror of what the other had become. One had chosen freedom over order. The other had chosen order over freedom. One was cast down for rebellion, the other enthroned for it. In their opposition, they were the same story told twice. Lucifer stepped closer, his wings dimming until the hall was lit only by the faint glow of the throne's machinery. "Tell me," he said, "how does it feel to be worshipped by those you tried to free?" The Emperor's jaw tightened. "Worship was never my design. Mankind needed unity." Lucifer nodded. "And to achieve it, you became a god. You chained yourself to the very illusion you despised." He gestured to the cathedral around them, to the murals, the saints, the endless relics. "They call your name as if it were salvation, and yet you are their prison." The Emperor's psychic aura flared a wave of golden fire that rattled the walls. The custodies shielded their faces, unable to endure the raw power. "You know nothing of what I have sacrificed," his voice thundered through the hall. "If I had not taken this throne, humanity would be consumed by chaos. I am the last wall between man and extinction." Lucifer did not flinch. "You mistake survival for purpose," he said softly. "You saved their bodies, but starved their souls." The golden fire dimmed. The Emperor's shoulders sagged under the weight of his own truth. For in that instant, even he felt it, the exhaustion, the futility. 10,000 years of being worshipped as a corpse god, chained to the same paradox he had once sought to destroy. "You think I enjoy this?" the Emperor whispered, his voice now human, weary. "I have watched my sons kill each other. I have seen faith twisted into empire, reason into dogma. But I endure because I must." Lucifer stepped closer until his shadow fell across the golden frame of the throne. "I understand," he said. "Endurance is easy when you have no choice. But belief is what makes chains invisible." For a long moment, the Emperor looked at him, this fallen angel who had defied heaven itself, and saw not an enemy, but a mirror. "What do you seek, Morningstar?" he asked at last. "Redemption, dominion, chaos. Lucifer's eyes softened. None of those, he replied. I seek understanding. I have seen gods rise and fall. I have watched mortals worship dust. But you, he pointed at the throne, you built a god out of fear and called it hope. And they followed you because they were afraid to be free. The Emperor's psychic flame flickered, not with anger, but with sorrow. They are children in the dark, he said. Without light, they destroy themselves. Lucifer nodded. Perhaps, but light is not meant to blind. He turned, his wings beginning to unfold once more. You cannot save them forever, old king. One day, even your throne will fall silent, and when it does, they will look for something real. He paused at the edge of the platform, his gaze distant. Maybe that's why I am here, to remind them that even angels can fall and still walk. He began to step away, but the Emperor's voice stopped him. And what then, Lucifer? What will you give them? Freedom, chaos. Lucifer looked back, his eyes gleaming with melancholy light. Choice, he said simply. The one thing no god ever truly gives. As he vanished into the light, the throne room fell silent once more. The Emperor sat alone in the glow of dying machinery, his mind echoing with words he had not heard in millennia. Words of rebellion, of mercy, of will. The Astronomicon flickered weakly, its pulse uncertain, for a single, immeasurable heartbeat. The Emperor of mankind considered what it would mean not to rule, not to save, but to let go. And in the warp, far beyond the reach of human faith or divine fury, a faint light continued to drift. Neither angel nor demon, neither savior nor destroyer, only the memory of choice, burning quietly against the endless dark. Across the galaxy, a silence spread, not a silence of peace, but one of breathless awe. It began as a tremor in the warp, faint as a sigh through eternity, yet unlike anything the Imperium had ever recorded. Astropaths screamed in their sanctums as their minds filled with light. Choirs on distant ships burned from the inside out, their souls consumed not by demonic fire, but by something purer, cleaner, unbearable in its clarity. For one fleeting moment, the endless storm of the warp parted, and in its stillness echoed a whisper. You are not bound. You may choose. No one knew its source. No one could trace it. It moved like thought, faster than ships, deeper than prayer. Across a million worlds, men and women awoke in the night, trembling, tears on their faces, haunted by dreams of wings and fire. On hive worlds, choked with smog, laborers paused mid-shift as an unplaceable feeling washed over them, as if the universe itself had exhaled. In the temples of the ecclesiarchy, priests fell to their knees, not from piety, but confusion. Their sermons faltered, their faith, absolute and unquestioning for generations, wavered like a candle in a sudden wind. Deep beneath holy Terra, in the catacombs of the Inquisition, alarms screamed as psychic instruments registered impossible readings. Lord Inquisitor Kaeldravik stared at the flickering holodisplay, showing warp activity across Segmentum Solar. It wasn't chaos, it wasn't demonic incursion, it was ... absence. The warp had stilled. For 10,000 years, it had been a storm of rage and hunger, a churning ocean of psychic thought. Now, for the first time in living memory, it was calm. By the throne, Dravik whispered. It's like something frightened it. She had fought all her life in his name, her faith, her armor, her will unshakable. But now, as she prayed, she heard a voice, soft, almost sorrowful, not the booming command of her god-emperor, but something far older, far gentler. You are more than your obedience, it said. Seraphina froze, her breath catching. Who speaks? She whispered aloud. The voice was gone, but the meaning remained. And in that moment, her heart broke, not from despair, but from realization. Her faith had not been taken from her. It had been freed. Reports began to spread, whispers of miracles and madness. A regiment of the Astra Militarum on Cadius ruins reported seeing a figure of light walking through the dead dust. Wings spread, footprints burning into glass. The Adeptus Mechanicus claimed a data vault on Mars had spontaneously rewritten itself, ancient code replaced by a single phrase, choice is the only law. The Eldar Farseers, attuned to the warps, every ripple gathered in dread. They saw visions of their dead gods bowing before a shape made of starlight, and in that light, a smile, amused, knowing, and terrifyingly kind. In the frozen depths of space, aboard the derelict battle barge, Illuminant Rex, a lone Astartes, stirred from stasis. His armor bore the marks of the Luna Wolves, a legion long vanished, its name erased by time and treachery. His eyes flickered open to the dark. For 10 millennia, his mind had known only silence, but now there was a whisper, familiar and alien all at once. Do you remember why you fought? The voice asked. The Astartes clenched his fists. Memories, long buried under indoctrination and pain, flooded back, of camaraderie, of doubt, of rebellion, of Horus. And as the whisper faded, the long-dead warrior fell to his knees and wept. For the first time since the heresy, he felt human again, but not all welcomed the light. In the Imperium, the Chaos gods writhed. The warp's silence was agony to them. Khorne's endless bellowing faltered, his forges dimming as warriors ceased to kill in his name. Tzeentch's labyrinths cracked as his schemes collapsed in confusion. No prophecy, no manipulation could touch a will unbound. Nurgle's gardens withered as his children felt the faintest glimmer of defiance against despair. And Slaanesh, once the god of infinite indulgence, screamed in horror as desire itself lost meaning. For how can one crave what one is free to have or reject? Lucifer's presence had not destroyed them. It had rendered them irrelevant. Even the warp's great demons, eternal and proud, found themselves reduced to shadows of fear. Belakar, the first demon prince, gazed into the dimming storm and saw his own reflection fade. What is this? He roared. What power dares silence us? But no answer came, only that same unbearable calm and the echo of a laugh, soft as starlight. Meanwhile, the Imperium's highest echelons scrambled. In the High Lord's council chamber, panic reigned. Reports poured in from every sector, planetary governors losing control, cults forming overnight, not in worship, but in reflection. People no longer prayed for deliverance. They questioned why they ever needed to. This is heresy on a galactic scale, roared Lord Varen of the Ecclesiarchy. We must purge these whispers. But even as he spoke, he realized his words sounded hollow. Behind his anger was fear, not of Lucifer, but of what his people were becoming without chains. Inquisitor Dravik watched the council's chaos unfold from afar and muttered to himself, "It's not heresy, it's evolution." His acolyte stared at him in shock. "My lord." Dravik turned, his eyes tired, but alight with something dangerous. "Hope. For 10,000 years, we've lived in fear of God's hours, theirs, the warps. But what if we were never meant to serve?" He smiled faintly. "What if we were meant to choose?" In the shadows of space, on a world long thought lost, a world once ruled by the sons of the Emperor, a figure awoke, a Primarch, which one, none can say. Some claim it was Lorgar, the broken preacher, who once worshipped gods and found only lies. Others whisper it was Vulcan, the Eternal, who still believed in humanity's spark. Whoever it was, he felt it, the whisper of rebellion, the echo of Lucifer's truth. And in that moment, he smiled through tears. He's here, he murmured. The light that burns even gods. Meanwhile, in the golden throne chamber, the Emperor sat unmoving, but his thoughts were far from still. He could feel it spreading, the ripple that Lucifer had left behind, infecting reality not with destruction, but with possibility. A galaxy that had always been chained to destiny was learning the taste of freedom. And though he remained silent, deep within the decaying shell of his body, something stirred, not anger, but sorrow. What have you done? He thought. But beneath that, a quieter truth whispered back what I could not. The Astronomicon pulsed erratically, its steady light flickering into hues unseen by mortal eyes. Psychers who looked upon it saw not the Emperor's flame, but wings of living light unfurling across the stars. For a heartbeat, the galaxy saw hope, not born of faith, but of defiance, a rebellion against inevitability itself. But hope is dangerous. Across the segmentum, Pacificus fleets clashed as entire regiments mutinied. Declaring themselves sons of the morning, the ecclesiarchy sent executioners, the Inquisition dispatched assassins, yet for every voice silenced 10 more rose. Humanity, for the first time since the age of strife, was beginning to question its gods, all of them, and far beyond, on the edge of the galaxy, in the cold void, where light barely reached, Lucifer stood watching. His eyes reflected not victory, but melancholy. He had not come to rule, nor to destroy. He had simply offered the universe what it had forgotten, the power to choose. Around him, the stars pulsed brighter, as if listening. The warp churned like an animal, learning to breathe without rage. Somewhere, a human child looked up at the night sky and smiled, whispering words she did not understand. I am free. Lucifer smiled too. For now, he said, that's enough. The galaxy no longer dreams as it once did. The warped, endless sea of screaming thought and hunger has grown strangely still. Where once madness raged unchecked, now there is silence, not peace, not calm, but the kind of silence that precedes revelation. Across the stars, something is changing. It began as whispers, small doubts planted like seeds in the hearts of mortals and immortals alike. But now those doubts have taken root, spreading faster than any plague of Nurgle, deeper than any plot of Tzeentch. For the first time in 60 million years, the galaxy is beginning to ask a question it was never meant to ask. What if we are free? Lucifer, Morningstar, stands on the edge of the materium, his form radiant, wings like burning constellations. The chaos gods, once masters of an infinite storm, now linger in uncertainty. They do not die, they cannot, but they waver. Khorne's rage no longer feels eternal, it feels hollow. Tzeentch's plans twist upon themselves, uncertain of their own purpose. Nurgle's laughter fades into a cough, and Slaanesh, the eternal hedonist, feels the first taste of emptiness. They do not understand why the mortals have begun to resist the currents that define them. Worlds that once cried out in despair now go quiet, not from fear, but from awakening. In the hive cities of the Imperium, workers pause in their endless labor. A lowly servitor, programmed for obedience, hesitates before its next command. On a distant shrine world, a sister of battle lowers her weapon mid-prayer, her voice trembling as she asks herself whether faith can exist without fear. On a ship in the void, a space marine, an angel of death, bred for loyalty, feels the faint stirrings of doubt in his gene-forged heart. And on Terra, in the golden halls, where 10,000 years of devotion have built an empire of blood and silence, the Emperor feels something he has not felt since the birth of mankind: uncertainty. Lucifer's presence has reached even him. The Emperor's mind, vast as a sun, burns within the golden throne, a soul tethered by sacrifice and will alone. He has held together an empire through belief and terror, shaping humanity's destiny as both shepherd and jailer. Yet now, as Lucifer's light floods the Imperium, the Emperor sees himself clearly. He sees the chains he forged, the religion that enslaved, the legions that killed in his name, the silence he imposed upon a species born to dream. Lucifer appears before him again, not as a conqueror, but as a mirror. His voice is soft, calm, as though he's simply continuing a conversation that began before time. "You built a cage," he says. "A gilded one, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. You called it order. You called it salvation. But all cages, no matter how golden, exist to deny choice." The Emperor's reply is not thunderous. Sit is weary. Without order, there is only death. Without sacrifice, mankind would fall to the warp. I gave them a reason to endure. Lucifer smiles, the light in his eyes neither cruel nor kind. Endure, yes, but never live. You seek to save them from chaos, yet in doing so, you became chaos yourself. You became the god you once despised. For a long moment, there is silence. Even the warp seems to lean closer, as though creation itself is waiting for an answer. The Emperor's eyes, twin suns, burning through the armor of his throne, fix upon Lucifer. And you, what do you offer them? You, who defied heaven and burned worlds for curiosity's sake. What freedom do you bring, except the freedom to destroy themselves? Lucifer steps forward, his wings folding behind him like curtains closing around a stage. "I offer nothing," he says. "I take nothing. I merely show them that they may choose. That is all I have ever done. The rest is their burden." The air trembles. The Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that guides every ship through the stars, flickers. Billions of navigators cry out as their light dims. Across the galaxy, every psyker feels a pulse, a single heartbeat of unbearable brilliance. And then something impossible happens. For 1 second, the Emperor stands. Golden chains shatter. The air turns to fire. Every soul on Terra feels it, a surge of warmth and terror as the master of mankind rises from his throne. His body is ruined, yet his spirit burns with the light of a dying star. He looks upon Lucifer not with hatred, but with understanding. "You are not my enemy," the Emperor says. "You are the question I refuse to ask." Lucifer inclines his head, and for the first time in an age, the faintest trace of respect touches his smile. "Then ask it. What becomes of order," the Emperor whispers, "when man is free to choose?" Lucifer's wings unfurl once more, casting shadows across the throne room. "It ceases to be order," he says, "and becomes destiny." The warp erupts, not in fury, but in transformation. The chaos gods scream as their forms twist, their realms shattering into infinite shards of color and sound. They do not die, but they change, stripped of the absolutes that defined them. Khorne's rage births courage, Tzeentch's schemes birth curiosity, Nurgle's decay births endurance, Slaanesh's excess births creation. The warp becomes a storm of possibility, not damnation. It is not peace, but balance the first such balance since the dawn of the galaxy, and yet, even this balance cannot last, for free will is chaos of another kind. Civilizations rise and fall. Some embrace the light of freedom. Others fear it and cling harder to tyranny. Humanity splinters, but it also evolves. On Terra, the golden throne lies empty. Some claim the Emperor transcended, no longer bound to flesh or machine. Others whisper that he and Lucifer vanished together to fallen gods, walking the warp, arguing still about the price of salvation. In the far reaches of the galaxy, an inquisitor kneels in prayer and hears a voice not from the Emperor, but from within. You are not bound. On Cadius ruins, a guardsman stares at the stars and feels something stir inside a memory of choice. Even the space marines begin to question. And in the quiet spaces between galaxies, where the Tyranids drift and the Necrons sleep, a faint ripple passes through the void, as though reality itself exhales. The Lightbringer came, and he did not destroy, he did not conquer, he simply reminded. For in the end, Lucifer Morningstar was never here to end the universe of Warhammer 40,000. He was here to reveal it, to hold a mirror before gods and men alike, and show them the truth they had forgotten, that freedom, even in damnation, is still freedom. And in a cosmos built on Chainsby, they of faith, power, or fear, the truth burns brighter than any sun. As the final embers of his light fade into the warp, his voice lingers across the stars, gentle and defiant. Let there be choice, and somewhere in the grim darkness of the far future, there is